a storm. Been really busy here weather-wise, obviously, with last week's storm, all the power outages caused by it, and now another storm. This one will not be snow, unfortunately, but will be mostly rain, although we will start as a little bit of snow, and then with the chance for some flooding and some damage to trees from wind out of this storm. So as you've, I'm sure, seen already, this is a big deal. The storm is one we don't see happen around here too often, and I try not to overhype the weather. Obviously, I get the meteorologist in me is always excited when everything interesting is happening weather-wise, but I try not to be overhype the potential dangers from it. This storm is a big deal, and I try not to say that too often. So this one really could be a big deal. Now, sometimes I've thought that in the past, and sometimes things don't come together quite the way you're thinking, and it doesn't end up being as big a deal as it could be. But certainly, if this goes as modeled, this will be a big deal, and certainly, especially if it goes as what's the not impossible higher end of the models, it would be a very significant issue. And so I just want to make you aware of that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. We're all, of course, rooting for winds to be a little bit lighter than we're thinking, enough that hopefully not too many power outages happen and that the rain is in the 1 to 2 inch range instead of the 3 to 4 inch range, because obviously that would make a huge difference and it just becomes kind of a nuisance as opposed to something that we're going to think about and remember several years from now. But it does have the chance. All the pieces are there to make it into a really significant event here across southern Vermont. So I want you to be aware of that because I think it's you should be prepared for that, and we can all obviously hope for the best. But what's happening right now? All right, we have significant development of the kind of secondary development of this low is not going to take over. We would like for that to be happening, right? This low here is just too strong in this front, and eventually we're going to kind of consolidate a low here across the upper Great Lakes. What we would really like to be happening is for this to develop and go out to off the coast, and we'd be getting a historic blizzard right now, but that is not what's going to happen. There was some models a week and a half ago that kind of indicated it. So we all got excited. Unfortunately, not happening because the atmosphere doesn't really care what we think about what needs to happen with the weather. It just does its thing. So, but you can see lots of convection across this area. We're really pumping moisture in to the southeastern United States, and that's heading up the coast and being drawn up into with very strong southerly flow that's continuing to develop. And our storm isn't really even getting going yet. We're going to show you temperatures at some point, but we just have temperatures crashing behind this front here. And that's before the front has even really developed. There's just a massive temperature difference between well below zero and warm temperatures here across the southeast. And lots of upper level energy, and that's all fueling our storm coming together. So on radar, you can already see, and we're not even really getting going with the storm. We do have a little bit of a surface low pressure here across the southeast. Of course, we have our original low up here across the Great Lakes. These two are kind of starting to get connection going to one another, and then eventually they will consolidate into a storm kind of north of Lake Erie, west of Lake Ontario is kind of where we're going to kind of end up, and the front just sweeps across the country. But in the process of that, we drive all of this moisture that's building across the eastern part of the United States up across Vermont, and also incredibly strong southerly flow and south and southwest easterly flowing or winds. So one of the things that's going to happen with that is our trees in southern Vermont are mostly, most of our heavy wind events are west and northwest flow events, right? A front moves through and then we get gusty winds. So the trees, over the years, they adapt to that, and so they're used to that kind of wind direction. We do sometimes get storms like this. This is not unique in the wind direction that's coming in, but it's a little unusual, and so the trees are a little more susceptible, which is also not going to help. If we had a northwest flow wind of 50 to 60 miles an hour, that would cause some problems, but our trees are a little more used to it. We could have 50 to 60, and there's definitely some modeled even 70 mile an hour gusts from the southeast. Our trees don't do quite as well with that. That just kind of exasperates the power outage issue potentially. Particularly where that's going to happen is at higher elevations and eastern and southeast facing slopes, and also more western, I think, Vermont than eastern Vermont, although everybody is susceptible to those power outage kind of things. All right, let's take a look at, here's your upper level energy, and you can see we've just got energy for days up here. We've got this incredibly large area of upper level energy with all the shaded orange here, and we've got more energy just diving in. So there's we already have a lot of energy in the atmosphere, and we've got lots of energy diving in to reinforce it. And the surface low is just really starting to respond to that now. The front certainly happened, but there hasn't been a lot of moisture associated with any of this yet because this is kind of coming from a very dry direction. But now we're pumping Atlantic moisture into it, which is why the surface low, which hasn't been that strong yet, is just starting to get going, even though you've already heard lots of headlines about this storm. All right, so in terms of temperatures, yeah, why is there a lot going on? Overnight lows, we were in the 40s and 50s here across, mostly 40s across the southeast United States, which isn't super warm, but it's a lot warmer than 20 to 30 below zero, even some close to 40 below zeros in western Montana, right? And this temperature gradient here, this front, which means business, that provides lots of energy at the surface to provide lots of lift, which means that you can really rapidly develop a storm. And you can see we're also pumping in some Atlantic moisture, and the Atlantic Ocean is still quite warm right now, so lots of moisture here. Now, we are cool across the northeast, which is why we're going to start as snow. And for higher elevations, it does look like we are going to accumulate some snow. So if you have to be traveling this evening, it could be slippery above 1,000 feet in southern Vermont. That would happen between about 7 tonight and midnight probably before the rain comes and washes it all away. So you should be aware of that. We could get 2, 3, 4 inches of snow maybe even in some spots. By the time you wake up on Friday morning, you won't even know that that happened because it'll all have been washed away by then, but certainly could get some snow to start here across the northeast. To give you an idea of what the storm track is going to look like, we're going to kind of go through things. So here, sorry, let's get back to the beginning. Just kind of watch it run through. All right, so here's we're going to, one more. As we start off, here's our storm about right now. You can see it's starting to move. We've got this low coming together with it, kind of redevelops across the Great Lakes into western upstate New York, and then really wraps itself up in the front, swings through. This is by 7 p.m. on Friday. So again, one more time, upper Midwest, and it's kind of moving east. These, we kind of get this connection between all of these low pressure systems. They consolidate into one here. We drive the warm air up before the front moves through. That's where the wind and all the rain comes from. So what does that look like in terms of practical weather? This map hasn't really changed too much. I think this is what's likely rainfall forecast, 2 to 3 inches for a lot of us. Again, we could end up on a lower end of this. Some of the models, a couple of the models have us as low as like 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches. So that's possible. There are a couple of models that are even a little more aggressive than this. This is enough rain. In the 3 to 3.5 inch range is where we start to have some potential problems. I think with some flooding where rivers kind of at least get up to roadway levels and things like that. There has been some models, some of the mesoscale models in some spots do put spot places out at 4 to sometimes even 4.5 inches. If that happens at any one location, a location could go from having some river issues to having those streams come up really fast, a lot of culvert issues and things like that at 4 to 4.5 inches. Is that likely? That's probably not incredibly likely, but it's definitely possible. Maybe a 15 to 20% chance that something like that happens in any given location here across southern Vermont. And if that happens, it is going to cause problems. So I want you to be aware of that. If you live near a river or something like that, and you know what happens when you have a potential for high water, you should be somewhat prepared for that. And definitely keep an eye on what's going on. Keep that weather. Keep your phone ready to go in terms of hearing weather alerts and stuff like that, because you could rapidly kind of go from a situation where you had kind of basically a flash flooding kind of setup. We're all under a flood watch across Vermont today or tomorrow. In terms of power outage threat, that really hasn't changed from what I said yesterday either. Elevated. I think the best spot to be here is in the Connecticut River Valley. Some of these places are the places that were hardest hit by the last storm. I think you won't be quite as hard hit. Western Vermont, I think, is kind of under the gun the most, and particularly southeast facing slopes across as you go across the greens, potentially for high potential for power outages as well. Everybody's got a chance at this. Everybody should be prepared to lose power. Everybody should be prepared to lose power for the potential of more than a day or two. And if that happens, it's going to get cold very fast if you don't have a generator or a secondary way to heat your house, or maybe a primary way if you heat with wood or something like that. And if that happens, temperatures are going to crash. We're going to be very cold Friday night. I know we're proud Vermonters. I grew up in New Hampshire, but I'm a proud Vermonter. I don't like, I like to think that I can live through anything on my own and grit and bare my teeth and do it. But this is the time to care about your neighbors, worry about your neighbors, check in on them. If you don't have a generator, think about, where am I going to go? Do I have a family member who has a place I think I can go that will have heat? Do I have a neighbor who will do that? If not, there's definitely fire departments or rescue squads or things like that. They're going to open up shelters if they need to. So, and I know nobody likes to do that kind of stuff, But don't try to live in your house at 20 degrees inside. It's just not worth it. Find a place you can go that'll be safe and warm, and deal with what happens after the fact. Now again, hopefully this doesn't happen. I'm not rooting for it, certainly, but I want you to be aware it could happen, and I want you to be prepared to think about what I'm going to do if it does happen. All right. Friday storm threat, significant wind gusts over 55 in many locations, which will bring down trees and tree limbs. Significant power outages, especially in the higher elevations of the greens and west of the greens. Very heavy rain with up to 3.5 inches in some locations, some flooding possible. Snow above 1,000 feet causing slippery travel from 7 p.m. midnight before being washed away by rain. Flash freeze. If you got to drive anywhere Friday night, be careful because we could flash freeze and there'll be lots of black ice on the roads, and you need to be aware of that. Sometimes that's the scariest driving conditions. All right, that's a lot, but I wanted you to be aware. I will be back tomorrow morning with the weekend forecast, which is my normal time, assuming I have power and assuming I'm not super busy with fire calls because I'm in the fire department here. If I am busy, then you'll probably get a text or you'll probably get a Facebook message from me saying, hey, be careful. It's not great out there. Otherwise, thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks to my patrons who help support the channel. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel before, I'd encourage you to do so. And thanks for just being careful out there during the storm. Stay safe out there. We're all going to get through this one together.